And joining us now is Jack Layton, the leader of Canada's New Democratic Party, and we welcome you back to TVO. It's good to have you here.
Great to be here.
Well, let's get this debate issue out of the way. Initially, we were told you and the Prime Minister were opposed to having the Greens participate in the debate. Now you appear to have had a second thought. How come?
Well, there were some concerns, but you know what was beginning to happen was the debate about the debate was becoming a real distraction from the issues that should be debated. And I want to debate the Prime Minister because I want to replace him on his job. I don't think he's doing the right thing for the country. And so I simply said, look, my only condition is that Stephen Harper be in the room so I can debate him, and it doesn't matter to me who else is there.
He's had a change of heart as well, and it looks like this will all happen. Do you worry that she will outshine? I mean, that was part of the concern I think other party members had, was that she's pretty larger than life, and she might outshine the rest of you. Are you concerned about that?
Hey, she's an effective debater. I'm running for Prime Minister. She's supporting Dion for Prime Minister, according to what she's said up till now. I don't agree with her on that. I think that we actually need a change from the last 25 years that we've seen in this country of alternating parties back and forth. And I'm offering really something quite different this time around for Canadians to choose, which is a Prime Minister who's actually going to put them first every day in the House of Commons.
Does this suggest then that the Greens are here to stay? They're an official, recognized major political party in the country as far as you're concerned?
Well, I think the debate certainly about environmental issues is here to stay. And there are many parties that will come forward with their ideas. I happen to think that the record of New Democrats for standing up for the environment is extremely strong. It was in 1983 that a New Democrat stood up in the House of Commons and started talking about global warming. And we've been bringing forward very practical, very doable solutions on those key issues ever since. And I'm glad that Canadians want all parties to address that critical issue.
You are, if I may say, campaigning quite differently this time, with a different strategy from the last couple of times. Let's show a snippet of your ad. Go ahead, Michael, roll tape.
Stephen Harper is a strong leader, with the strength to brag about billions in corporate tax cuts, while 1 in 8 children lives in poverty. Strong enough to ignore nearly 5 million Canadians who can't find a family doctor. And destroying the environment while you pay record high gas prices? Strong leadership. We need a new kind of strong.
The new strong is about fighting for what's right for you. I'm Jack Layton of the New Democrats.
What does that mean, your kind of strong, a new kind of strong?
Well, I think that we've seen Stephen Harper portrayed as someone who takes decisive decisions. He's strong on the issues, but as one friend said to me, you know, the worst kind of strong is when you're wrong. And I think he's out of sync with the values of the average Canadian family when it comes to things like looking after one another with our healthcare system. The New Democrats brought us something called Medicare, where we say, if you're sick, we're all going to help look after you.
So your definition of strong differs from his in what way?
Well, I think what we're talking about is a more compassionate Canada, a competitive one, but one that doesn't let people just simply sink or swim. One that is a voice for peace in the world. That often takes a lot of strength to speak up against conflict and violence. And we're offering that kind of strong. That's what New Democrats have always stood for.
NDP leaders, both in this province and federally, have almost never run to say, I want to be Premier, I want to be Prime Minister. They always say, we want to do well, we want to get a lot of seats. You're running this time saying, I want Harper's job, I want to be Prime Minister. Why the change in tack?
Well, because I think the country needs a change in tack. We've seen the old parties going back and forth and never really very much change when it comes to policies. They promise all kinds of things in elections, try to portray themselves as being different. But what I've noticed is that when the boardroom tables call from Bay Street, either one of those parties has snapped to attention, and they've had huge corporate tax cuts as a result. But meanwhile, families who are played to in elections as though they're an audience that maybe you can seduce are left behind. And that's why even the broad middle class in Canada right now is feeling completely squeezed. They're very worried about their future, increasingly so. And I believe that in the House of Commons and around the cabinet table, those issues of the kitchen table should be front and center. And whether it's the economy, healthcare, the environment, those are the questions that a Prime Minister, Jack Layton, would make sure was at the center of a cabinet discussion every day.
Okay, fair enough. For you to become the leader of the government of this country, you'd have to pick up probably 100 seats. Can you point to an electoral map of this country and tell us what 100 seats you think you've got a shot at winning?
We're running to win all over the country.
And, really? Where are the 100 seats you think you can win that you don't have today?
Well, I'm serious. They're all over the country. And whether it's a Jack Harris in St. John's or whether it's a Paul Erngout in Nunavut, I could just go through Ray Martin in Alberta. People say, well, you never win in Alberta. Ray Martin was the leader of the opposition, an NDP leader in Alberta. So I think the possibilities are endless. And, you know, I run into people all the time who tell me, Jack, you can't get it, because that's not possible. They told us you couldn't win in Quebec. The NDP would never win in Quebec. We won in Outremont with 50% of the vote, 48.
By-election.
Do you want to place bets on the next one?
I don't bet. But tell me two seats you're going to pick up in Toronto.
Well, I think Marilyn Shirley would make a fantastic member of Parliament at Beaches, and she's got. She came close last time.
No, she didn't. She was lost by 4,000 last time. It wasn't close.
Well, I think she's going to win this time.
All right.
And then you look at the founder of the Portuguese National Council of Canada, Peter Ferreira, running in Davenport. Look at Ali Naqvi, one of the new visible minorities, a Muslim man, someone who has spoken out on the issues, running in a riding that is completely empty up in Etobicoke North. How about the leader of the Brampton Health Coalition, Jagtar Shergill, running in Brampton West?
You think you can get up to 100?
Well, how long do you want me to keep on going?
Enough.
Steve?
Let's move on. I get you. Okay. But tell me this. You've talked a great deal about change. The issues that you listed in our conversation a few moments ago are the kinds of things that Barack Obama talks a lot about. It seems to me you're consciously making an effort to kind of associate yourself with the kind of campaign the Obama people are running in the United States. Is that a fair assessment?
Well, look, the American approach to politics is very different than ours. We're somewhat more understated. But I think it's fair to say that New Democrats have been saying we need a fundamental change for a long time. Yes, I'm using that kind of language because I think it's needed. And I've been very impressed by how many of our American friends are facing the same kind of issues and have the same worries that we have.
Okay, but
you know, they've been concerned about the Bush administration. Mm-hmm. Here, people have been concerned about the Bush administration and Stephen Harper's proximity to the Bush agenda when it comes to foreign affairs, climate change, letting the squeeze come down on the middle class. And so the fact that there are some parallels here between what's being talked about in the U.S. With the Democrats and what the New Democrats are talking about here really shouldn't surprise
us. Well, humor me for a second on this. The NDP, I think, has always tried to portray itself as a kind of party of principles. You have worried less about gaining power and more about being that moral conscience of the legislature or of the federal parliament. By making an explicit appeal for power, you want to be our prime minister. Do you risk undermining those principles?
I don't think so. Tommy Douglas always talked about pragmatic application of principles. He said, I'm not here to talk about Medicare, I'm here to make it happen. And so when we say, we're not here just to talk about pharmacare so that people, when their doctor says, you need this medication and you can't afford it, you don't get it, we're here to make it happen. When we say, we don't want to just talk about climate change and raise it as an issue. I want to see concrete action. I want to see wind turbines going up across this country with the help of the federal government, not tar sands being exploited with subsidies of tax dollars. And we can make those kind of changes
All right,
happen.
Let's pick up on that. As long as you're on it, we've got 10 minutes left, and we're going to spend it all on issues. Your first trip was to a place that has not elected a lot of New Democrats. It was to the province of Alberta, Stephen Harper's backyard. You went up in the sky, and you had a good tour of the oil sands project. Tell me how you would change what's happening on the oil sands today.
The first thing is we would issue no new permits for new projects there until there were the plans in place to the satisfaction of a broad range of Canadians to address the issues. First, that the Aboriginal health issues that are devastating places like Fort Chip. I mean, the level of cancer there it just makes your spine tingle. They can't fish for the food that they've eaten all these years because of the poison. Until the air pollution has been addressed, until we know what we're going to do with the massive greenhouse gas emissions. Tim Flannery, who's a good friend, the author of The Weathermakers, you may have interviewed him, I'm not sure, but he's written in his new book of essays about the tar sands, and I urge Canadians to have a look at that essay. And he has saluted the New Democrats for having come out and said, we can't keep approving this because the devastation to the environment is too great. And in addition, and some of your viewers may not know this, there's a movement in Alberta of workers, the Federation of Labor, environmental groups,
farmers,
and many
yes.
others, and farmers, who are saying we can't keep giving approvals to Exxon like Stephen Harper did in a week after the federal court said that he shouldn't, to go developing these projects when we have no idea how we're going to deal with the environmental consequences.
If we're promoting books here, William Marsden won a National Business Book Award for a book called Stupid to the Last Drop, where he talks about all of this stuff as well.
I have a heavily annotated copy of that book.
I'm sure you do. The Canadian, all right, here's where I get into the however, comma, the Canadian Energy Research Institute says the oil sands stands to contribute $541 billion towards our GDP, $93 billion of government revenues, 293,000 jobs to the Canadian economy during the 2000 to 2015 period. If you do what you say you want to do, how will what you do affect all of that?
Well, first, if that's all true, why are we giving them taxpayers' dollars? Why are we giving Exxon taxpayers' dollars? They clearly don't need it if this is true. They're making record profits. But putting that aside, have they calculated the cost of cleaning up the mess? Has anyone asked the next generation whether they agree? Has anyone talked to the existing generation of farmers and Aboriginals? We went to Fort Smith, where the river, the Athabasca, flows into the Slave and then on up into the Mackenzie, up ultimately into the north and into the Arctic. Who is asking the people of the North whether they want the toxic pollution? So
I hear you, but there's tens of thousands of people who depend on their livelihoods, as you know, from all across the country on that spot right now.
Can I correct that?
Sure.
We're flying in temporary foreign workers to do the projects because we haven't got enough workers right now, and that's why the Alberta Federation of Labor is so concerned. We're doing it too fast, and we don't know where we're going. It's like we're putting our foot down on the accelerator, heading towards the cliff without a thought to the consequences, thinking, oh, I can just jump off, surely there'll be a parachute available.
Do you worry, though, about lost tax revenue, lost GDP, lost job creation?
I worry about the costs, the environmental costs and the financial costs in the future.
But what about the flip side?
Well, here's a better way, though. If we're going to try to develop energy, great. But let's do it in a sustainable fashion. Let's take the subsidies and investments and put them into the wind industry. Let's put them into the solar production. We were at a plant this afternoon of a new Canadian entrepreneur producing solar energy. Let's put it into renovating people's homes and buildings across the country so they can burn less and pay less.
That all makes sense, but it won't create as many jobs as what's happening there right now.
It creates many more jobs.
You can't know that because it hasn't happened. You don't know that.
All of the studies show it. I'll give you an example. In Germany, they now have more jobs in the steel industry producing wind turbines than they do producing cars. When are we going to get it that we shouldn't be living in the 19th century view, which is that you burn everything in sight? You should be in the efficiency world. You should be doing like the Northern Europeans. And our plan is very aggressive on this. It says we should stop subsidizing those big oil companies. In fact, we should limit their pollution and make them pay and take every penny of that carbon price and put it into things as diverse as transit, renewable energy, energy efficiency, green car manufacturing,
okay, but just
and
so
those sorts of things.
You don't see an end to subsidizing the auto industry in this country or this province, do you?
I want to see a focused support, not just across the board, here's a few bucks, try to keep a plant open. I say, here's the dollars, let's work together to produce the cars that Canadians are looking for that burn less, pollute less, and won't see our jobs being shipped overseas to the places where they are building those cars.
Would a Jack Layton government run a deficit?
No. And you know, the NDP in power in Canada in the last 25 years has the best record of running deficit-free governments. And that's not me talking.
That's not in Ontario either.
Well, Dalbray's in a different place now. But if you look at the record, and this is the Canadian, the Ministry of Finance has shown it, and that doesn't include 17 balanced budgets in a row when Tommy Douglas was Premier of Saskatchewan. It's a principle of our party to run a balanced budget every year.
If your environmental goals and your job creation goals run because it's possible that you may have to go into deficit for a few years in order to achieve some of the other priorities that you have.
No, I don't.
It's not possible?
I don't agree with that, and we would not do that. That's not our approach to it. You know, when people are trying to manage their family finances, they have a certain sensible approach to it. And we think that that's what they want in government. That's what we offer.
Well, but families go into deficit when they got to buy a car or a house. Presumably you would do the same thing.
Well, investing is important, but you have to do it in a sensible fashion. Our country has plenty of debt at the moment. We don't think it needs any more. Canadians, on the other hand, have enormous personal debt right now. And that's wrong. And when Mr. Harper says, oh, all is well with the economy, he should look at people's personal debt, because with the terrible interest rates people have to pay on credit cards, I've met with people who say, I had to pay my mortgage payment or my rent with my credit card, Jack, because I had to buy food for our family. And I mean, it literally has come to that choice for a lot of families today. And I don't think governments get this. And that's why I think we need a change at the top.
We've got a few minutes left, and I want to spend it talking about Afghanistan, because I know this has been an issue that has been extremely important to you and your party. Parliament, as you know, voted to extend the Afghanistan mission to 2011. You opposed it. If you become Prime Minister, would you get our troops out the day after the election?
I would order that to happen. It would be done safely. It would be done in a fashion that was orderly, because that has to be governed by our decision makers on the ground.
But the mission's over.
But the mission would be over, and at the same time, I would be calling the senior leaders of the world to say, Canada's looking to play a new role, and we're asking you to join with us at the UN and at NATO, because the mission is taking us deeper and deeper into civilian deaths, soldiers' deaths, poppy production, corruption, and danger. Let's carve out a path, a comprehensive process towards peace.
What's the new role that you see?
Well, I believe that Canada should be that voice for peace again. Once we were, Lester Pearson and others. And people can say, oh, well, you're dreaming in Technicolor. First of all, that's the way you should dream. You should think about the possibilities. And secondly, the world needs Canada's voice again.
Does it disturb you that your position and the position of the Taliban is the same thing on this?
Not at all. They say we should, what they want to do is kill Canadians.
Well, they also want us out right away.
That is a reprehensible.
I didn't mean that. I didn't mean that aspect of it.
I'm not saying. I'm just saying. Let me just be crystal clear. Anyone that would suggest that, such as this group has, that they're going to go and kill Canadian soldiers to try to influence Canadians, is taking the most reprehensible position possible. We'll make our own decision here.
But they want the troops out right away, and so do you.
What we want is a pathway towards peace that achieves the goals that we share with the people of Afghanistan. The current path we're on is not taking us there. It appears that even the Prime Minister now is in agreement with that. He used to put down anybody. He'd throw insults.
Let's be careful here. He hasn't said he wants them out right away. He said if they don't stand up by 2011, he can't see having our commitment there last forever. That's what he said.
Well, I don't think he can be trusted on this. Just like the previous, the official opposition, which used to say 2009, and then suddenly it was 2011. For your viewers who want to know that we're going to have a new course in Afghanistan, it's the New Democrats and Jack Layton in the Prime Minister's office that are going to make sure we follow that course.
I got 30 seconds left here. If you do find those 100 seats that we talked about earlier, what's your first act as Prime Minister?
The first step is to bring forward a budget that would address the issues of the kitchen table and stop bending over to the interests of the boardroom table. I would roll back the big corporate across-the-board tax cuts that have not served Canadians well, and we'd immediately invest in the key initiatives that need to happen, including the establishment of low limits on carbon emissions from the big emitters, a system to make them pay, and invest in the environmental solutions. So it would be about those very practical steps that set us on a new course and that really put the hardworking families of this country front and center right from day one.
Mr. Layton, I know how busy things get on the campaign trail, so we're grateful you could spare some time for us here at TVO tonight. Thanks so much.
It's a pleasure, Steve.